Okay, brilliant. So hello everybody and welcome to this masterclass on researching law firms. I'm delighted to be running this session for you and I hope that you'll find this masterclass enjoyable and get involved in the conversation by submitting your questions throughout. The first thing that I want to do is just set some aims for this masterclass. So we've got 3 today. By the end of this masterclass, you should 1, have identified some key methods to use when researching firms. Number 2 is know the unique selling points and recruitment processes of each of the firms joining us today. And the final one is kind of understand what's expected from you personally at this stage. So we're going to come back to those aims in just a moment, but before we kick off with our panelists, I wanted to go over some house rules. So first and foremost, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you have, and I'll be posing them to our speakers throughout the presentation. Please post these earlier rather than later. We have a lot of people kind of submitting them in the last 2 minutes, at which point we're not going to have time to get to your questions, so please post them throughout the session. Please also note that this masterclass is recorded, so if you have any issues, if it cuts out, you will be able to watch the session back. We'll send an email with the recording to everyone that's registered today, and it will also be on our YouTube channel shortly. Please feel free to post about this masterclass on social media using #LCMMasterclass. And my final thing is that we have so many fantastic masterclasses coming up over the autumn term, so please look out for our link to our intellectual property session and also how to make law firms application session, which are coming up. There'll be a link to those in the follow-up email. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is kind of set out a poll to get an idea of who is joining us today. So if you could let us know what stage you're at by answering this poll. Always kind of nice to hear where everyone's coming in from today and get an idea of that for our panelists. I'll just give it another sort of 15 seconds for you all to answer. I can see most people have voted, but if you haven't, get it in now. Just give it another 5 seconds. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So we've got a lot of other today. So I don't know if that's like postgraduate students perhaps, or career changers, a lot of second and third, and a good amount of first year students too. So fantastic. Okay, so now that we've got an idea of where everyone's come from, I think we're ready to get this masterclass started. So I want to start by getting our panelists to all introduce themselves. So Olivia, let's start with you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your role, and Jones Day as a firm?
Sure. Hello everyone, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm really pleased to be speaking to you all today. So my name's Olivia Coppin and I'm part of the graduate recruitment and trainee development team here at Jones Day. My role more specifically is on the graduate recruitment side of things. So heavily involved in our sort of events program, which we're obviously in the middle of at the moment. Also supporting with, you know, the sort of full recruitment cycle, so the application through to interviews, assessment centres, vacation schemes. So I've been at Jones Day for about 4.5 years now. So it's getting to that nice stage now where I'm seeing the trainees who are now qualifying, which is a really nice part of my job. So Jones Day, if you haven't already heard of us, we are a global law firm. We were founded in the US, but now have a very sort of significant presence around the world with over 40 offices. The London office is the largest outside of the US, and we've been well established here for a number of years now. So we recruit our trainee lawyers into the London office. We are a commercial law firm. In London, we are full service, though our sort of largest practice areas here in London are our global disputes and corporate practice, but we are full service. Probably the most important thing to note, and if there's one thing you go away and remember about Jones Day today, is that we train a bit differently, and I'll probably mention that a couple of times, maybe more than a couple of times throughout the hour. But so we have a non-rotational training system, which essentially means that our trainees do not sit in seats throughout their training contract. they have a much more sort of flexible and free training experience where they can dictate the work that they want to do, and they seek out that work from the lawyers around the office. So that's the sort of key USP for Jones Day in London. So I will leave it there and hand over to the other panellists.
Brilliant, thank you, Olivia. Kiera, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Watson Farley Williams?
Yes, hi, yeah. So I'm Kiera and I am a 4th seat trainee at Watson Farley and Williams. So I've been at the firm for just over a year. So in a similar way to Jones Day, we sort of have a different training contract structure here. We have 6 4-month seats rather than 4 6-month seats. So that's why I'm only a year in, but in my 4th seat already. So at the moment, I'm sitting with the firm's general counsel, but I've previously sat in real estate, and I did assets and structured finance in London, and then I also did assets in Singapore, which I've just come back from. And so a little bit about Watson Farley and Williams. So we're an international firm. We've got 19 offices globally, and we are a sector-focused firm. So the firm is really strong on transport, which is maritime, aviation and rail, and then energy, which is sort of conventional renewable power, oil, gas, mining and commodities. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Kiera. And Theresa, could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a bit about White & Case?
Sure, yes. So hi, I'm Theresa. I'm a 2nd seat trainee at White & Case. I'm currently sat in the project finance department, and my 1st seat was in contentious construction, which is essentially construction arbitration. I've been here for 7 months now. Before that, I studied law and French law at the University of Bristol and graduated in 2021. In terms of the firm, so we're also a global full service law firm. We've got 44 offices worldwide. Like Jones Day, we were also founded in the US, but we now see ourselves as having an international presence. Our kind of main departments are international arbitration, project finance, capital markets, and corporate M&A. We have kind of the classic training contract rotational training structure that you see with 6 4-month seats, but what sets us apart is that we have an international guaranteed secondment in the final seat of the training contract. So in the last 6 months, you go to one of our offices abroad.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, yeah, we were going to do unique selling points later on, but all 3 of you covered the unique selling points of your firm straight away. Get the attendees engaged. So everyone, the first thing that I want to do, sort of as a prelude to the first question, is to find out what your biggest concern is about researching firms. So I'm going to launch this poll, and you can let us know what you're worried about, and hopefully we'll get rid of all those worries throughout this session today. I'll just give you a few more seconds to fill that in. Don't be shy, we all started out up here once. I can't wait to hear what you guys are worried about, and hopefully we'll get rid of all of those today. Okay, so I'm going to close that in a couple more seconds. We've got some people worried about not knowing how much you should know before applying, not knowing where to look, not knowing the best research methods, and then also a few people putting something else. So please feel free to put your other worries in the chat, and we'll submit them as questions, and we will cover those later on.
Sure. So researching different firms before you even kind of put pen to paper for an application is hugely important, and sort of can't be underestimated, I think, how important it is. I know it's tempting to kind of dive straight in with the applications, where, as soon as they open, and wanting to, be as early as possible. But it is so important to take some time and effort to really research before you dive straight in, and it can really benefit you more than anything else. Really sort of thought through research can help you throughout the recruitment process and beyond, building your understanding of different law firms, and obviously getting more sort of specific when you're actually applying to your kind of short list of firms, can really help you build that sort of base knowledge as you then progress, hopefully, through the different stages of the recruitment process. I like to think of, or give sort of the advice on viewing research, trying to flip the kind of mindset of, rather than just thinking, and that poll result sort of reflects, what do I need to know? How much do I need to know? How much are these law firms expecting me to know? How can I prove to them that I know what they do and who they are? Rather than putting that emphasis on kind of us as the law firm, or the recruitment team more specifically, flip the mindset to actually, what do I want to know about these law firms? Have a think about what is really important to me. What are the questions that I do genuinely want the answers to when it comes to my future career and the law firm that I'm potentially going to train and practice out at. So it's really important for you to do that kind of genuine research, which will actually be more enjoyable for you, because you'll actually be finding out the answers that you genuinely want the answers to. And that will just mean that the research you're doing is a lot more meaningful when it comes to actually coming to complete your application form. So it's really important, as I said, to sort of take that time, a bit of self-reflection as well before you go into applications. Think about what is important to you, and that can, not just the sort of work side of things, the work environment that you want to work within. Have a sort of think yourself before you then sort of reach out to different law firms. So it's hugely important, and hopefully this event today will be a good sort of starting point for you.
Brilliant, thank you, Olivia. And then Theresa, on that, do you have anything to add kind of from your personal experiences of applying to firms, why research was so important for you to secure that training contract?
Yeah, so kind of echoing what Olivia said, I think it's twofold really. So firstly, you want to know kind of what you're particularly interested in, what works for you, the practice areas that get you excited, what kind of training contract will benefit you personally. For example, do you want to be in a training contract cohort with a lot of people? Do you want a smaller cohort with a lot of responsibility? Do you want to work internationally? But I think kind of it's also really important from a firm perspective for them to see that you are really interested in that particular firm, that you've done your research, that you know what makes them stand out, because law firms are businesses, they try and set themselves apart from competitors with unique selling points. So it's really important to show the firm that you know about them specifically, and you've kind of researched them and taken the time to see what differentiates them.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And then Kiera, coming on to you for the next bit, could you share some of the key things that applicants should be actually thinking about when they're making their applicant, well, when they're starting to conduct their research? So for instance, like how long to spend on researching, how in depth, where do they start?
Yeah, of course. I think sort of it builds on the themes that Olivia and Theresa were talking about. So obviously researching law firms can be so overwhelming. There's so many. When you start looking into them, it does seem a lot at first, but I think the basic starting point is to create sort of a short list of personal criteria. So the things you're looking for. So like Theresa mentioned, you can look into like the work a firm does, their culture, their training contract structure, because as we've all said, the training contract structure at each of our firms is completely different. So a lot of things to be aware of, sort of the geographical spread of a firm, where they're based, the trainee intake. So yeah, personally for me, I thought I kind of started with this broad research strategy with a personal list of criteria, and then kind of filtered out law firms based on whether they fit within that criteria or not, so that then you can research those more in depth, because it's impossible to research every single law firm sort of in the depth that you need to if you want to apply to them. I think obviously learning from experience in my first cycle of applications when I was at uni. I took that sort of broad brush approach and thought, oh, as many applications as I can get out there, it's something will land. But I think we're learning, yeah, you have to sort of know exactly what you're looking for in a firm and why you think you will suit the firm as well. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Olivia, do you think there's anything else that you would add to Kiera's answer, anything she missed or anything you disagree with?
No, not at all. Absolutely. I think, you know, as Kiera highlighted, you know, without even directly answering that question, you know, we've all spoken about how each of our firms train differently and the sort of those differences between our firms, and that, you know, instinctively can say to you, oh, that sounds, you know, that could be of interest to me, or, you know, I like the sound of that, and you're already starting to gradually sort of hone in on the firms that you sort of find that kind of affinity with. So yeah, no, completely agree.
Brilliant, thank you. And then let's come on to sort of active research strategies and making a solid plan for your research. So Theresa, did you kind of have a plan, a sort of layout of this is what you were going to do and this is what you wanted to find out about this firm at all?
Yeah, so as Kiera mentioned, I had kind of certain key criteria that I wanted, and I then went on to lawcareers.net and actually used the filters on the website. So I think you can filter by practice area, location, expertise of the firm, and then you can narrow down kind of the firms that fit within your criteria and the ones that you're interested in. For example, I was interested in a global firm with a large international presence, somewhere I could go abroad with, that had a large international arbitration practice as well, with kind of, you know, a medium-sized training contract cohort. And then kind of after I'd filtered out that, I went on to Chamber Student Guide, or, you know, I think there's other similar websites such as Legal Cheek, which have kind of really good firm profiles. And those kind of discuss the seats, the training contract structure, rankings. They have some key firm facts as well. So it really gives you a snapshot of each firm, so you can easily kind of compare it against other ones that you've narrowed down. I then also had a look at kind of the specific law firm website online, and there's always really useful information on there, whether that be kind of in the form of blogs or annual reports. I know White & Case has also specific students and graduates website. If you just type in students and graduates into Google for White & Case, you'll see a really useful website, and that goes through kind of trainees discussing the firm, the culture, why they, you know, specifically chose White & Case. So I found that to be really useful as well, to see how White & Case differentiated itself from other law firms that I'd researched. And then you've also, some law firms do kind of these virtual vacation schemes, which you don't have to apply for them, I don't believe. You can just kind of do the program, see the type of work that trainees actually do, the work law firms do for their clients, and I found that to be a really useful indicator as well, as to a specific firm, their work, kind of whether it's something that I would like, and then it's something good to talk about in applications as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Olivia, I think Theresa kind of just mentioned quite a few good places that you could start conducting that quite like basic level of research. So when you're kind of just starting out, where do you think are the best places that candidates can be looking for information about firms?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, you know, all of those resources that Theresa mentioned are hugely helpful, particularly even that order. I think it's really useful to head somewhere like lawcareers.net to start with, because, you know, if you start just looking at individual firm websites, you know, that will take you hours and hours to really get the information that you need. So these sorts of websites really helpfully kind of consolidate all of those key that, that basic level, how many offices, trainee intake, where are they based, that kind of thing, in one place. So you can just head there and get all of the information that you need. And as Theresa said, you then start to broaden out from there. Once you sort of filter down, okay, I like the look of the firms that have a smaller intake. So then you start to hone in. And then when you head to their website, that also means you've got a bit of an idea of who they are, and you can have a bit more of a strategy when you get to the website, because often these websites have so much information on there, it's difficult to know where to start sometimes. So having maybe a few questions or topics that you've seen that you want to sort of delve into a bit further. I would also add, it's all well and good being able to filter down, perhaps it's the corporate law firms, but how do you know if corporate law does interest you? So these sort of masterclass events, or any events that go into a bit more detail into what the actual work is like, the day-to-day sort of responsibilities. I know recently we took part in the M&A masterclass, and an associate in our M&A team, was speaking about his kind of day-to-day life, the type of work he does, the sort of level of client interaction, typical sort of documents that he would, regularly deal with. So it's really useful, beforehand, actually finding out. You may have an idea of what you think a corporate lawyer does, but it's probably quite different in reality and does differ from firm to firm. So those types of events, particularly if it's a panel, again, you're getting to hear from 3 or 4 different firms in sort of one hit. So those types of events, or it may not be a sort of live event, there's content like a day in the life of a corporate associate or a corporate trainee, then you can get that information to get a bit of an understanding before you can then decide whether that is something you want to pursue or not.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, absolutely, just to echo what Olivia was saying, I think resources, for instance, like on Law Careers Net, we've got a Meet the Lawyer profile where you can hear about a particular lawyer's sort of practice area, or Meet the Recruiter, because then they kind of go through the recruitment processes of firms, and those are sort of really, really good resources for that very entry-level information. And then obviously James Day is turning up to Law Careers Net Live, which I think we'll come on and speak about in a little bit, but that's a great place to come and network with firms. So Kiera, kind of on a bit more of the in-person events, when you attended, well, I'm sorry, I don't know if you're COVID, so that wasn't really happening, but in-person events, did you kind of come with a strategy, or like were there key things that you were trying to pick out from coming to an in-person event? And then also afterwards, in follow-ups, what sort of like messages do you think might, if someone sort of met you at an in-person event, what could they message you where you'd actually bother to respond to them on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I actually was applying during COVID, so not many in-person events for me. But I also think it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because then there came this sort of flurry of online events, things like this that might not have been as sort of accessible as they are now. And I think the key thing about meeting people, whether it's online or at in-person events, is I think people are sometimes a better resource than reading online, because you can read about a firm as much as you want online. But when you actually meet people that work at the firm and speak to them about the work that they do, you can sort of feel their passion, feel their sort of what they're saying about the firm is maybe more true than what you're reading online. I think it just gives you a better perspective about the people and the culture and the sort of work that they do, beyond sort of how different directories or websites sort of present themselves. So yeah, I attended mostly online events, things like Legal Cheeks career fairs they had online, which I believe is still happening this year, and we're attending. But in terms of speaking to people online through either LinkedIn or things like that, so that was sort of a key thing for me, I think, in the application process, because I didn't have that sort of face-to-face interaction with people. And I still think it's a really useful thing that you can do in your research process. So I think once you've sort of narrowed down, or if you want to find out a bit more from people about their personal experience at the firm, sort of reaching out to current trainees on LinkedIn is a really good way to speak to people and hear about their personal experiences. So at Watson Farley, you are guaranteed an international secondment at least once, if not twice, 3 times, sort of as many times as you're open to. So I was able to sort of reach out to current trainees at the time, speak to them about the secondments they had been on, which you might be able to tell from their LinkedIn profile, or maybe from different things the firm have put out online. So yeah, my top tip probably for when you're reaching out to them is don't just send sort of a generic message that looks like a copy and paste with maybe a wrong firm name in, or their name spelled incorrectly. And also make sure that you're not asking questions that you can just find the answer to online. I think people will be much less inclined to answer it if it's something you could easily find just by Googling the firm, as well as making sure you're not just sort of rewording the questions from the application form, because that comes across really obviously in people's messages. But yeah, I think people generally, well, I found that were very responsive and happy to speak about their personal experiences. I think if you show that you've taken the time to sort of research them, the interest you have in the firm, that they're more than happy to sort of take the time to speak to you, which again goes a long way to show, I think, the culture of the firm and sort of the attitude the people of the firm have.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's already useful. And then Olivia, in terms of when people actually come to these in-person events, whether that's like a law fair or CareerNet Live, wherever they're meeting you, so you have a discussion with a candidate and it's great, they seem really engaged, you know, they really feel like they've got on well with you. How can they kind of reflect that in their application to show, you know, I had a great chat with Olivia and I'd really like to put that into my application, but how do they translate that?
Yeah, it's difficult to do in that kind of genuine and impactful way. But, you know, first and foremost, it is to tell us where you met us. You know, a lot of candidates, you know, can come through later in the process and they don't always realise, you know, that you should be telling us kind of the events that you've been to and where you've met us, because we are interested to know that. I mean, as Kiera said, you know, that sort of follow up in terms of connecting with people on LinkedIn, and, you know, all of those useful tips around the best way to contact people. Something really simple, I think, you know, when you've been to an event and spoken to lots of people, you know, on your way home, maybe on the train or the following day, just note down like everything you remember or the key things. Perhaps it was a panel session and there were certain things that really resonated with you. Make a note for yourself, do that for all of the events that you've been to. And, you know, you can quite easily come back to that when it comes to applying to that firm and you're not having to, you know, remember who was that partner, what did they say about that, you know, because as specific as you can be will really help to demonstrate that you really engaged with us. You know, you didn't just come to an event, you're actually able to take it that next step and tell us, well, what did you learn from that event? You know, what did you take away? Why did that really resonate with you? You know, and they're just really useful things that you can use, you know, when you're staring at the blank box ready to write your cover letter. You've actually got some things to pull on to be able to sort of fill that out with really sort of useful information. So yeah, definitely sort of consolidate your thoughts and have a bit of kind of reflection after each event. And it was sort of speaking quite specifically about the applications and, you know, speaking for Jones Day, that cover letter really is that your chance to say in your own words, you know, why you're applying. So that's where you can really maximise on your sort of key takeaways from the events that you've joined and met us at Jones Day.
So it's in that kind of bit where it's like, why, you know, why the firm and why are you passionate? That's a really good opportunity for them to get in those events and those conversations, you'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, as Kiera said, you know, having those sort of in-person interactions or, you know, having that kind of one-to-one discussion where you can really get kind of under the skin of, you know, just the sort of surface level website information. You know, you can actually speak, what is it like, you know, training in that environment? You know, what is it like having that kind of direct client contact? And those types of things is what is going to help you stand out when it comes to recruiters reading your application form, because you're showing us that you have taken that further step and you've really found out what it's actually like to work at Jones Day, not just the kind of headline facts and figures about what it is we do. So sort of the more interactions you have, meaningful interactions. I couldn't echo more what Kiera says about, you know, don't ask questions that you could easily find on the website. You know, use that time to have that kind of human interaction, you know, make the most of it, and that will just help you when it comes to completing the applications.
Brilliant, thank you. There's a sort of sheet for people who are trying to think up like what could be a good question. Honestly, really recommend just looking at the questions that we use in our Meet the Recruiter and Meet the Lawyer profile, because they're quite a good way to find out about the firms. You know, we've specifically designed those. So if you're at a law firm and suddenly you're like, oh no, I've forgotten my question, those are good ones to go for it to sort of back up. Fantastic. So we've done sort of the broader areas of research. I want to move in a bit more to sort of specialist research. So we've covered unique selling points of each firm, so I don't want to rehash those. I think we've got those at the beginning. Theresa, are applicants supposed to be sure on what practice area they go into when applying for their training contract? You know, were you expected to already know exactly what you wanted to do?
In my experience, no, absolutely not. So it's definitely better to keep an open mind, kind of as you're researching, and also maybe as you're going into a back scheme or a training contract, because people, as they go through this journey, often find that, you know, practice areas that they particularly wanted to do or thought they liked, they didn't end up liking, and vice versa. So for example, I very much came into this training contract, you know, thinking I was going to be a disputes lawyer and disputes was my thing. And then I did a contentious seat and now transactional. And I'm finding that I'm much more suited to the transactional nature of the work. So I think it's really, it's good to like know what you're interested in, but also to keep an open mind and realize that actually, you know, there might be practice areas that you end up liking that you hadn't particularly considered before. And that's also, you know, the purpose of a training contract, to try different areas of law to see which one, you know, to see which ones you like the most. And that's also why a lot of training contracts at law firms make you do a dispute seat and also a finance seat. And then you've got, you know, various different specialist areas of law as well. So employment, IP, tax, things that you might not have thought about, such as ESG. So yeah, definitely good to have an interest, but absolutely you don't need to, you know, be sure on your preferred practice area going through. I would say that kind of in your application process, it's fine to, and it's good to, you know, mention a specific practice area of that firm. So for example, if you're interested in international arbitration or in project finance, do mention it in your cover letter, and you know why you're interested in that, why it excites you, kind of the type of work that the law firm does, because that will come across really well in your application.
Brilliant, thank you. Kiera, what about you? Did you know the practice area that you were going into or wanted to go into when you started, and did that change for you at all?
I think, yeah, to echo what Theresa said, I don't think you need to know at all. Obviously, appreciate a lot of people might not even have done a law degree at university, so they might not have sort of any idea what sort of thing they want to do. But again, if you can mention the type of work the firm does and you have an awareness of sort of all the different areas of expertise you could potentially work in, it kind of shows the depth of your research and how much you know about the firm. I think specifically for Watson Farley Williams, one of the main reasons I applied was that they have the 6 seats in their rotation. So obviously it gives you a chance to gain a broader range of experience doing 4 months in 6 different seats, but alternatively gives you the chance, if you then figure out there's a department that you particularly enjoy, you could then sort of double up and do 2 seats, so 8 months, or even 3 seats a year. So yeah, I think you don't necessarily need to know what it is you want to do, but you need to have the idea of the type of firm you want to work at, and the type of work that firm does that you're particularly interested in, and why you personally are interested in that. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And for people that still aren't really sure what kind of firm they want to work at, whether that's city, regional, US, we are actually doing a masterclass later in the autumn term on the different types of firms, so you can register for that, and that might give you a better idea and help you out a bit with your research. The other thing I'd say before moving on is for practice areas specifically, we have practice area profiles on Law Careers Net, and from there you can kind of hear from a very specific lawyer about their practice area, get an idea for that. A lot of them are also podcasts, so if you prefer to listen along, that's a really nice way to kind of get an idea of a practice area without super intense research. Next thing that I wanted to come on to is, Olivia, in terms of kind of specific questions or things that comes to research when looking into firms, do you have maybe like 3 key things that you would say people should be looking into about a firm when they're applying?
Sure. So I think from sort of what we've discussed, perhaps I could probably say 3 within, but I think splitting it sort of into 2 camps almost, we've spoken about, what are the things that you want to know that are quite specific to you and your interests. Like we said, do I want to be within a small intake or a large intake? Do I want to train, in the sort of structured seat system, or do I want something a bit more flexible? And then I think the other camp is, okay, I know those things and I know what I want. So I've, decided, right, I'm going to apply to Jones Day, for example. Then it's, right, how can I really showcase my knowledge of the firm? So it's more of that kind of showing off your knowledge. So, thinking about more specific things, not just the practice areas. It's the questions like, who are the firm's main competitors? This is if you can identify, 1 or 2 competitors and explain why they are. Is it that they practice in, different, obviously practice areas is quite a common one, but there may be other sort of factors of the firm where there are sort of similarities between other firms and they can be considered competitors in a sense. If you're able to answer that question, that's really brilliant and helps to show that you have an awareness of who different law firms are and how Jones Day, for example, sort of fits into the sort of law firm market, as it were. So that's a really great one to show that kind of next level knowledge of the firm. Identifying the firm's main clients is a brilliant one, and also again shows that you've done that further research. Then we've spoken about that kind of ethos, the culture of the firm. That I would say is more on that sort of more personal camp, is the way that the firm works and the sort of environment within the firm. Does that align with kind of your interests and the way that you want to work? Again, on the other camp, is there any information that you can find, perhaps this is more specific to, perhaps on the Jones Day website, about any upcoming, big sort of developments with the firm, or, any cases or deals that are going on at the moment that are particularly kind of substantial and will be, groundbreaking. So I think it broadening it out into those kind of 2 broad camps. There's definitely sort of overlap between the 2. But it's deciding what you want, and then once you've set on the firms that you want to apply to, how can I really set myself apart and show that I've really sort of dug a bit deeper and I've got that sort of those stretch points, as it were, when it comes to my application. How am I going to make it really stand out? So as much research as you can do to just show that broad understanding will really set you in good stead.
Brilliant, thank you. Kiera, when it comes to research, I think one of the big areas that we often talk about is competitors. So how sort of essential did you find it to research competitors, and also where can you find firms' competitors?
Yeah, so I think in my personal experience, I found that this was quite a commonly asked question on sort of applications or interview. But even if it's not explicitly asked, I think if you can sort of as Olivia said, show that you're aware of the firm's competitors and how they see themselves, the type of work they do, their clients. Yeah, it shows that you really sort of have an understanding of the firm, and again, shows that you've done your research. But yeah, personally, I think the best way to find out who a firm's competitors are is to sort of look at firms who operate within the same sort of spaces, so within the same practice areas, who have similar clients. I think another way that I found was useful in identifying clients is sort of looking at the lateral hires of a firm. So if you can sort of see where the firm is hiring across from, it might indicate that sort of they're similar practice area, similar experience. And I think, yeah, the key thing as well is that when you're applying to a law firm, they're not naive in thinking that you're only applying to them. They know that you're applying elsewhere. So obviously, if you can demonstrate that you're applying to sort of different firms that have a similar sort of thread or do a similar sort of work, maybe have a similar training contract structure, or also offer an international secondment, I think it goes a long way in showing that you know exactly where you would see yourself as a trainee. And yeah, I think being transparent in where else you're applying, if they are competitors of the firm, can be really helpful and sort of work in your favour rather than working against you.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, okay, we've got another sort of 8 minutes of time before we move on to all of the questions coming in. I can see so many questions coming in, so thank you. You've got a very engaged audience today. I want to offer some specialised advice to non-law students. And Olivia, as both Kiera and Theresa came from law backgrounds, I'm going to pass these on to you. So my first question is, how many non-law students would you say you typically take in compared to law? And do you have sort of different expectations for these candidates?
Yeah, so it broadens out really from year to year. It kind of varies year to year, but it is approximately half and half, which may come as a surprise, particularly to non-law students, which actually provides a really nice sort of mix within the trainee cohort. You know, the non-law students haven't all studied the same non-law degree as well. We often have a really nice mix of different sort of degree backgrounds, which I think just adds to, you know, that just sort of benefits the cohort as a whole. In terms of the recruitment process, there definitely aren't any sort of, there isn't a different standard to meet for non-law students. You know, I probably speak for you know, most, if not all, law firms to say that the recruitment process is designed to be accessible to all, whether you do study law or non-law, and there is no particular benefit either way or advantage within the recruitment process. You know, I think it's important to remember, I know, you know, you're applying to, you know, train as a lawyer, but at this initial stage, it isn't a test of your legal knowledge at all. So it isn't something you would ever need to worry about as a non-law candidate. It's more about your sort of qualities, your motivation, your kind of suitability to the job. And it's, you know, we're looking for that potential at that stage. You know, that's what, you know, the PGDL and the SQE course is for that kind of the base level legal knowledge before you start as a trainee. So, as I said, the recruitment process is designed so that law and non-law students have a sort of equal opportunity. And, you know, as I said, we're sort of testing those other qualities. I think it's important as a non-law student, you know, I think you have to expect the question, whether it's in an application form or when it then comes to, you know, having a face-to-face interview, you know, to be asked, oh, you're studying, you know, economics or history, you know, well, why do you want to be a lawyer? You know, and that isn't asked in the sense of why aren't you studying law? It's just purely out of interest, you know, what has led you here, you know. And I think it's important to just focus on the skills and attributes that you've sort of collected through any degree that you've studied, and how you see the sort of transferable skills into a legal career. So it's useful to kind of sit down and think, well, why do I want to be a lawyer, and be prepared to answer that question. But that is exactly the same for law students as well. And, you know, sometimes we see that law students can fall into the trap of thinking that just because they study law, that, you know, automatically answers that question. You know, you still also have to be prepared to really give, you know, concrete reasons as to why you want to be a lawyer. So we absolutely welcome applications from any degree, background, and as I say, it actually makes for more of a diverse and interesting trainee cohort.
Brilliant, thank you. Theresa, obviously one thing that you could demonstrate kind of law or non-law is commercial awareness, but I think a lot of the time people's concern is kind of A, how you can research anything to do with commercial awareness, and then B, kind of how students can demonstrate a commercial awareness on their applications. So do you have any advice for people on that front?
Yeah, so I think demonstrating commercial awareness is important from two perspectives. So firstly, law firms want to know that you understand their clients, their businesses, their sectors, and then they also want to know that you understand the law firm as a business and how it operates. So in terms of kind of the client side, I think, you know, reading, sounds very kind of general and obvious, but reading kind of the news on a daily basis, but maybe filtering it down more to look at specific deals or specific sectors such as energy, if that's what your kind of law firm is specialized in that you want to apply to. I think a lot of the time reading blogs on law firm websites are also really useful in that respect, because they'll explain a deal or kind of things moving within a sector that will apply to their clients and also to the specific law firm. You've also got really good podcasts that I used before applications and still listen to now. So I think the Economist is a really useful one, which I'm sure you know about. And, you know, they're really useful summaries of important things going on at the minute. I think they're maybe like 5 or 10 minutes. And they'll talk about it from an analytical perspective as well. And then I think, so it's not just about reading these things, it's also about thinking to yourself, okay, how do these things affect the businesses? How do they affect the sectors, the way they're operating and the market? What does this mean? What are the specific challenges for them? And it's something that takes time, and I think attending events, you know, to do with commercial awareness, such as like various webinars with law firms and events, also teach you to do that and help you to practice that. I think kind of, you know, doing things like insight schemes and going to Law Career Net Live, things like that, help talk you through, you know, how law firms work as businesses as well. You know, whether that's business development, how they pitch themselves to clients, differentiate themselves from competitors, things like that. I think those are the most useful events to go to find out more about that, because it's quite difficult to just read about it abstractly.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, we've got so many audience questions. So Kiera, I'm going to pose this first one to you. About 10 different people have asked this. So the first one is sort of how many applications would you recommend making? How many law firms should you apply to?
I think it's very difficult to put a number on how many you should apply to, but I think from my own personal experience, and as we've all been saying, you sort of do need to narrow it down to a short list of firms so that you can make that sort of, do that thorough research on the firm and make an application that's not going to be a waste of your time, because obviously you put a lot of time and energy into these applications, but if you don't sort of narrow it down so you can put enough time and energy into them, then it sort of is a waste of time. I think a good number, I don't know if everyone else would agree, maybe sort of anywhere between 7 to 10, might even be on the sort of too many. But yeah, I think in my in like the year when I was successful in applying for my training contract, I was in that sort of number, around 7 applications. Once I'd sort of narrowed down to the firms I was interested in and sort of practice areas and the different firms that I was looking at, I think about 7.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And then Olivia, I'm going to give this one to you. A lot of people have asked when to apply. So I think our general advice is if you're a law student, you should apply in your 2nd year, non-law 3rd year, but there's no proper cut-off. Would you say that that's right?
Yeah, that's in terms of kind of the earliest you can apply. If you're in your penultimate year of a law degree, and the earliest if you're non-law is from your final year, just sort of with the timeline in terms of the sort of law school courses you would need to do before starting. But I would just say, you know, that is the earliest you can apply, but, you know, don't feel that that's your only shot. You know, if you are a law student, you know, just starting out on your 2nd year, it's still very kind of early days for you. You know, there may be lots of research that you want to do into the career and, you know, make some decisions for yourself before, you know, you're really set on different firms. So I would just, you know, take the time to really research, even if that means you then apply in the next year. You know, we receive applications from graduates, postgraduates, you know, even up to kind of career changers. But, you know, we would always recommend applying when you feel ready and not feeling that you need to really rush that application in. And I would just say, you know, we understand that there's so much pressure at the moment, you know, to secure that training contract. And, you know, in your cohort university, you know, who's going to be the first to secure that training contract or get vacation schemes. You know, just remember that you are all on your own kind of journey. Sorry to use the J word, journey. But, you know, just focus on yourself. Try not to, you know, let whatever, you know, anyone else is doing kind of affect you. You know, do your own research, make your own sort of decisions. You know, take each law firm as you find them. There's obviously lots of press and, you know, around different law firms. But yeah, kind of take your time, make sure you're ready, and yeah, apply as soon as you are.
And what about, so I'm going to continue with you, Olivia, what about in terms of applying to vacation schemes and training contracts? People are asking, do I have to apply for a vacation scheme, you know, to get the training contract? What's the recommended route?
So at Jones Day, you do have to complete a vacation scheme. So it kind of takes that question away from you. So we don't offer direct training contracts. And the biggest reason for that is because we train, you know, so differently, and it's quite distinctive that we really want each candidate to try out our training system on a vacation scheme, and all of the other benefits of spending 2 weeks in our office as well. So yeah, we only have the vacation scheme route, but I know other law firms do have that separate training contract route as well, you know, where you would just apply, you know, perhaps interview and complete another form of assessment, perhaps an assessment centre, and you could be offered a training contract there and then, rather than having to complete a vacation scheme. So yeah, that's another kind of that may be another question that is part of your research, you know, and you can understand which firms do offer that. But yeah, I would just say there's obviously huge benefits of spending 2 weeks at a law firm, but yeah, it completely depends on your sort of personal circumstances.
Fantastic, thank you. Theresa, I've got a question for you. Someone's asked if you could kind of identify a key skill or attribute that you believe that trainees at the firms have that makes them good lawyers, and is what you're kind of looking for new joiners.
I mean, there's not one key attribute. I'd say, you know, there's a lot of different ones. So, for example, attention to details, really important. Diligence, you know, making sure that you're doing kind of everything, well, you're doing everything diligently, looking through everything, making sure, you know, there are minimal mistakes kind of when you're sending out things. being organized is also really key. You know, you'll have so much email traffic coming in that you kind of need a good level of organization to deal with all of that. Knowing how to prioritize as well. You know, you'll get tasks from different people within the law firm at different levels of seniority, and, you know, with different deadlines as well. So it's important to know which tasks to prioritize, and also within that kind of how to manage your time and make sure that you're not, you know, spending lots of time on something that is, you know, potentially doesn't need it, or can, you know, someone else can review it, and that, you know, you're not there till like 1 AM on a specific task. Also, communication is key, you know, because you'll have all of these tasks come in, you constantly have to communicate and let people know the status of your work, where you're at, if you're having, you know, specific problems, or if you have any questions about a particular work that you're doing. It's really key to kind of communicate with lawyers internally, and also to learn those communication skills for when you're liaising with, for example, external lawyers or clients as well. You know, writing clear emails and letters and drafting is really important. So various different skills. I can't narrow it down to just one, unfortunately.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think you've covered a lot and given everyone a lot to think about. Kiera, we've got a question here, which I think is a really, really brilliant question. It's obviously, when you're researching firms, a lot of people are going to be finding the same information. So someone's put here that their concern is kind of how to make their application stand out in doing that research, because if everyone's kind of got the same information, how do they really show that they've utilised that for a good application? Would you say it's kind of relating that to their personal experiences, or what would be your suggestions here?
Yeah, I think it would be linking it to your personal experiences and your interests, because obviously that is unique to you and is ultimately why your application is going to stand out, because you're not going to be applying to a firm for the exact same reasons as somebody else. So you need to make your reasons clear, rather than sort of just generically stating what the firm does and that you like it. Link it to your personal experience, which doesn't necessarily have to be legal work experience. It could be anything sort of that demonstrates any of the competencies that Theresa's listed. So if you, I don't know, if you play a team sport, shows you're a good team player, you might be good at communicating, different ways that you can link it back to things that you have done that don't necessarily have to be from legal work experience. And again, linking back to what we were saying earlier about interacting with firms in sort of a face-to-face environment, or personal one-on-one conversations with people from a firm, that's a really good way of sort of making yourself stand out from everybody else, showing that you've gone that step further to interact with the firm and really engage with them on another level, rather than just researching them online and sort of picking things from their website.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And Olivia, I'm going to bring the final question to you, which is, what's the number one thing that you kind of like notice is the number one mistake that you see when people haven't done enough research in their application, and how easy is that to spot?
I wish I could narrow it down to one. No, I think spelling, punctuation and grammar cannot be underestimated as to how important that is, and how much it can let down an otherwise fantastic application. So, you know, don't let that happen to your application. You know, check and recheck. Get someone else to read it, because there's often things that you don't notice yourself that someone else may with fresh eyes. And you know, as has been mentioned, that is telling us that you have excellent attention to detail if your application form is spot on. And just avoiding being generic. I think all the things we've said, you know, will help to make sure that your application is very unique and stands out. But my sort of advice point would be, if I could take out the name Jones Day, put another firm, replace it with another firm's name, and it kind of makes sense and is, you know, is relevant, then, you know, it isn't tailored enough. You know, each application has to be really tailored to the firm you're applying to.
Fantastic. I think that's really good advice. Well, what I want to do now is just launch one final poll to find out what everyone's got from today. So I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. And in the meantime, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to especially thank our panelists, obviously, and for our audience for getting involved in the conversation. We really, really hope that you found this session informative and are now feeling more confident in your legal journey. I know that we did not get to cover all the questions. I think this is the most questions we've ever been asked in a topic. So thank you so much for getting engaged. But I promise a lot of the answers are on the Law Careers Net website. So we're pleased if you did not find the information today, have a look on there or send us a DM. And I'm sure our panelists would be very happy for you to contact them. It's really, really great to see what you've taken from this session. So thank you for filling that in. Just before everybody goes, just a reminder to attendees that we'll be sending out a link containing the recorded session from today, so keep an eye out for that. A survey will also be popping up as you leave, asking how you've enjoyed today, so please fill that in. Let our wonderful panelists know what you enjoyed hearing about their firms each. And as a reminder, we will be running another session on making law firm applications, so please join us on the 19th of October for that. The link for that will be in the follow-up email. And finally, you can come and network with firms and ask your questions in person at Law Careers Net Live. So get your own applications in for that. Thank you so much again, Theresa, Olivia and Kiera. Really, really appreciate you taking part in today. And thank you to everybody. We look forward to seeing you all at our next masterclass. Have a lovely rest of your day.